The United Kingdom was at war with Germany and the Axis powers. It was a time of great upheaval. Men, women, and children experienced extreme hardship and suffering in one form or another. Few escaped the harsh conditions of wartime life. The country was bombed, including the threat of gas attacks. Famine was a real threat, and food rationing began in 1940. Rations were introduced for meat, sugar, butter, cheese, eggs, and even clothing. Over 1 million children were evacuated from cities and forced to adjust to being separated from their families and friends. London was bombed for 57 consecutive nights, and other major cities and ports were subjected to massive raids. Women and children aged 14 to 17 were fully engaged in labor, many of them replacing men who had gone to the front. Children who reached the age of 18 were called up for military service, boys into the armed forces, and girls into the women's auxiliary services, the army, or other important war work, including mechanics, engineering, and munitions production. My name is Sally Thatcher, and I am the proud owner of our family farm. Like most other farmers, my husband Robert went to war. At 29, I was a healthy and very strong woman with a face tanned from long hours of working outdoors. My long, curly red hair was usually tied back and often covered with a scarf to keep it out of the way. After Robert left, we had little contact. He sent me only a few short letters, and I hoped that my letters reached him, but I couldn't be sure. Then I received the terrible news, a telegram saying that he had gone missing somewhere in Burma. That was almost 3 years ago. The chances of survival were slim. At best, Robert would end up a prisoner of war in some insect-infested hole. I was exhausted from working on the farm. Without the help of the girls from the Land Corps, it would have been impossible. 4 young women were living with me. They had been helping me since spring, and planned to stay at least until harvest time. The girls persuaded me to take them to the weekly dance in the village hall. I gladly agreed, as they had very little else to do. When we arrived, I looked around. As usual, it was full of women and there were no men in sight. They were all at war, fighting all over the world. As a result, we women danced with each other, trying to look cheerful. I danced with the butcher's wife, Thelma Swale, who was a butcher in those days because her husband was also in the merchant navy. It wasn't an unpleasant experience, in fact. The touch of Thelma's large breasts against mine was definitely pleasant. God, I really hadn't had sex in too long. At that moment, there was a commotion as American soldiers arrived. They were polite and waited quietly at the door, asking if they could come in and dance. 4 of them came in, thanked us for the cider, and sat down at the table. Soon they started asking the women to dance, and to my surprise, they asked me too. I hadn't been in a man's arms for so long that I was a little confused, as if I had almost forgotten how to behave. They danced with different women, and most of them seemed to be charmed by the young, handsome men. I saw one of the guys dancing with Marie, one of my girls from the Earth Army. She was only 17 and seemed completely enchanted by the dashing American captain. I believed this could cause all sorts of problems, so I decided to intervene politely and told Marie that she should check on her sick grandmother. She left, a little annoyed. Her dance partner, the captain, smiled at me and took my hand. "So, are you the protector of all young women or just Marie?" "She works for me and she's only 17. I know her mother, and she would never forgive me if anything happened to her while she was under my care." "I understand. You know it was innocent. I saw her standing on the sidelines, desperately waiting for one of the guys to ask her to dance. I believed it would be nice for her. She could tell her friends about it, but it wouldn't have gone any further." Damn, I jumped to conclusions. "I'm sorry, I was probably being too protective and assumed the worst about me. Don't worry. I understand your concern. Anyway, I ended up dancing with the most beautiful girl in the room, and more importantly, she's my age. God, you Americans are so smooth. Aren't you embarrassed when you throw out all those meaningless compliments? Women aren't fooled by that." You'd be surprised what women are fooled by. Yeah, and then you swear eternal love. More like passion. Good old honest passion, however long we have left. It was just a phrase, but it struck a chord with me. Who knows how long we have left? It seemed that the tide of war had turned, but air raids continued regularly, exacerbated by flying bombs. Who would have believed that unmanned missiles could be launched from another country? By the way, I'm Andy at your service, and you are Sally Thatcher. Good thing you said your name twice, huh? Well, Sally Thatcher, it's very nice to meet you. We danced one dance, then another, and then another woman asked us to let her have a turn, and I couldn't refuse. The soldiers left an hour later, promising to return the following week. Some of the women were pleased with this idea, while others frowned disapprovingly. They did indeed return, and not just them, but a whole truckload of soldiers. They asked permission again and were allowed in. The atmosphere improved, they were full of energy and joking. The dancing became more energetic and fun, and we all had a great time. For some reason, I became the object of attention of two different men, Andy and a young infantryman named Jake. I guess I was easy prey because I was a widow, and most of the other women were still in some kind of relationship with their husbands. Their visits to the weekly dances became regular. After a few weeks, Andy offered me a pair of nylon stockings. How much will they cost me? Nothing if I can watch you put them on. I believed that nylon stockings were impossible to get in those days, and I was tired of staining my legs with old tea bags and drawing a line with a pencil to imitate the seam. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I don't have any garters, so I can't try them on. Andy laughed. Well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I'll agree to a kiss, but only a real one. Damn it, okay. Meet me in the back in a couple of minutes. I was very nervous, but I smiled when he approached. I panicked and quickly kissed him. It all started innocently. He laughed and gave me the stockings. I can't wait to see you in them next week. Promise you'll wear them. Maybe you'll have to wait and see. I already knew the answer would be yes, but I decided to push it. Sure, if you bring me some sugar so I can bake a real cake, I might try. As we turned to go back into the house, I caught a glimpse of Mrs. Jenkins kneeling in front of the soldier. Whatever she was doing, he was clearly enjoying it. Andy noticed them too and exhaled. God, you got off easy. Or you picked the wrong woman. No, I'm sure I picked the right one. You're the most attractive woman here and you're sweet. What will a bunch of provisions get me? I looked back at Mrs. Jenkins. I'm not sure I can do it. Listen, instead of you going over there, maybe I'll go. I don't understand what you mean. Oh, poor thing. You've never been kissed before. I felt myself blushing. Well, no, I mean, it's not right, is it? Oh, trust me, it's very right and very erotic. Don't tell me you've never felt satisfaction. I didn't quite understand what it was, and I felt even more awkward. Maybe I was missing something, like Andy believed. After all, I was married. I should know more than him. That night I couldn't sleep and dreamed about what it would be like to be kissed. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Then I remembered what Mrs. had done. God, how I missed male company. After what seemed like an eternity, it was suddenly over. Victory in Europe Day, VE Day, arrived, and celebrations began everywhere. The girls from the land army quickly got dressed and left the farm. As always, the village celebrations took place in the hall. Everyone dressed up and celebrated. It was the best night of our lives. The feeling of relief was overwhelming. We couldn't believe that it was really over, and that we had survived. Soldiers appeared and asked the women if we wanted to go dancing in town. When we explained that we had no money, they said they would treat us. 12 of us decided to go, and the guys were thrilled. I insisted that Marie and Jenny not go. They were too young, but 2 other girls joined us. We jumped into the trucks and had to squeeze together or sit on our knees. Andy put me on his lap, hugged me and held me close, wrapping his arm around my knee and holding the stockings he had given me in his hand. We had a wonderful night, dancing and getting drunk. The women weren't used to strong drink yet, and many bars were men only, although the war had changed a lot. Most of us were in our 20s and 30s, although the mayor's wife, Mrs. Roberts, was well over 40, though she didn't look her age. We spun around the dance floor, our dresses fluttering, revealing stockings and garters. No one paid any attention. If there was ever a night to let loose, this was it. Alcohol flowed freely, and it seemed like everyone was kissing and hugging. There were no rules. Everyone was too excited or drunk to notice or care how others were behaving. I danced with dozens of men and had a wonderful time. A few hours later, we jumped back into the trucks. Jake managed to grab me just before Andy did. Now all the women were sitting on their knees. There was even more touching and kissing in the truck. The truck stopped, we got out, and saw an empty field hospital. It was equipped to receive the wounded but had never been used. The guys insisted that we continue the party. There was a gramophone and alcohol inside. It was obvious that they had a different kind of party in mind, and I, like the other women, didn't mind. Most of us were older than our young lovers, although I was concerned that there were more men than women. The dancing quickly became heated, and every guy I danced with groped me. I saw Mrs. Featherstone being led to a soldier's cot. That broke down all barriers. Like several others, I was led to another cot. Andy and Jake followed us. We sat down on the bed, and he started kissing me and soon unbuttoned my blouse. I turned and saw Jake sitting on the other side. He leaned over to kiss me too. My God, what am I doing? Kissing two men. I looked up and saw similar scenes all over the room. It was a real party, 12 village women and maybe 20 young, fit soldiers. My friends were doing the same thing I was, and it made me feel normal. When the party finally ended, it was almost dawn, and all the women looked guilty. We got dressed, my precious stockings ruined. I saw some of the others pulling theirs up to secure them before putting on their dresses. The night had been so intense, but luckily, I was left alone with Jake and Andy. One of the trucks took us home. We agreed never to mention our night out of time. It was a unique experience, and we returned to our lives as conservative country women. We got out of the truck with red faces and a sense of shame and walked the walk of shame to our homes. The following week, the soldiers came to the village club. The other women and I were confused, and many refused offers to dance. I danced with Jake and Andy, but asked them to behave themselves. We didn't want anyone to guess what had happened, especially since several husbands had already returned home from their service. I tried to see the situation through my husband's eyes. It was obvious that the soldiers knew their wives. Now they were asking questions. I heard Thelma denying everything and trying to block out her memories. Then Barry Carruthers suddenly dragged his wife home, hoping it would be sex rather than accusations. It could have ended in disaster, so I asked Andy to send all the soldiers home early. A few months later, I received a telegram saying that Robert was alive. I read it over and over again. Could it be true? I couldn't allow myself to believe it and get my hopes up. The telegram said he had been found in a Japanese prisoner of war camp and was returning to the UK. It was a miracle. I desperately wanted to see him and started worrying again. Was he all right? What had happened to him? The stories about the camps in Asia were horrific. Waiting for him to return seemed even longer than the war itself. Finally, I met him at the port. Many of the men who disembarked were thin, with eyes bulging from hunger. Then I saw him and cried. He was so emaciated that I hugged him gently, afraid of hurting him. He hugged me with surprising strength. He noticed my anxiety and assured me that he had already started to gain weight. His body had changed, but his eyes remained the same, full of love and devotion, just like mine. The first few weeks were devoted entirely to caring for him. I wanted to confess and try to be honest with him, but I had to wait until he was stronger. Several months passed before I finally gathered the courage. "Robert, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we?" "Sure," he said, turning toward me on the couch and looking at me expectantly. I took a deep breath. "You know I love you and always will." "Why should I believe you won't love me forever?" "Because I did something really terrible." I sighed and he held his breath. "I cheated on you on Victory Day." "What the hell? No, that can't be. With whom?" "With an American soldier." "I'm sorry. We were all drinking and excited that the war was finally over. It was just that one night. Nothing serious." "It may have been over for you, but not for us. The Japanese were still fighting." "I'm sorry. I convinced myself that a few drinks wouldn't hurt and neither would dancing. Then we started kissing and he kissed me. I've been faithful to you all these years and wasn't sure you were alive." "How far did you go?" "We had sex. Several times. I'd rather not go into details. It doesn't show me in the best light." I couldn't mention both men. He would think I was a complete slut. Maybe I'll tell him later if he insists on details. I was so lonely and it felt good to be part of something. And then to get attention after being stuck on a farm. Look at me. I'm just a simple farmer's wife with tanned skin and rough hands. "You're beautiful to me. You've always been beautiful." "Not anymore." I'm tainted. Fucking Yankee, overpaid, overexcited, and here he is. Where is he now? He was sent back to the States. I'm so sorry. I hope we can forget about it. It was a moment, and it seemed like the usual rules didn't apply. It will never happen again. I feel terrible. Things were tense between us. I was waiting for the thunder to strike. I could see that Robert was trying to forgive me, trying to find a way out, but whether he could was still a question. A few months later, we were enjoying a normal evening, sitting on the couch and listening to the radio. Robert had physically recovered, almost doubling his weight since his return. I noticed him looking at me and turned to smile. I froze, realizing that he wasn't looking at me the way he used to. I tried to hold back the tears. "You never looked at me like that before. You always looked happy, even excited, to see me, but now your gaze seems more neutral." "In a way, that's true. You never forgave me, did you?" "I'm trying, Sally, I really am. I believed I had forgiven you, but I can't forget. Things aren't the same as they used to be. You were everything to me. Sometimes I forget, and sometimes these thoughts come flooding back. I can't give myself to you completely like I used to. What we have is still good. Yes, it's good, but maybe not as magical as it used to be. By the way, I know the whole story. It sounded like a fun party, a few guys, and you gave yourself to all of them. I'm sorry. I thought the details would only hurt you. I went with 2 guys. It was so unlike me. Nothing like that had ever happened before. The night was just crazy. Looking back, I can't believe that was me." Robert sighed. "No matter how hard I try, I just can't shake the feeling that we are different now. I thought so much of you at camp and dreamed of coming back to you. My dream finally came true, but then your confession took it all away from me again." We sat in silence for several minutes. That felt like hours before I finally gathered the courage to ask the question I was so afraid to ask. "Do you want me to leave?" "No, stay. This is your farm, and you've run it without me for years. I'll leave." "Where?" "I don't know. Maybe I'll go traveling. Find work on farms around the country. I feel like I need to leave, to escape." I spoke quickly, trying not to panic. "No, please don't do this. I can't live without you. I've already lost you once. Even if you want to divorce me, please stay here. Try to find peace. I'll help you with anything I can, just as a friend if you need it. I want to do this for you, to take care of you." After that, we hugged, and I held on to him desperately, begging him not to leave. I insisted on moving into the spare bedroom, saying I would only come back when Robert wanted me to. He didn't leave, but I got the impression that he was still thinking about it. It was a difficult truce, but just friends felt like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. It meant we could care for each other without tying everything to my actions as a wife. It also gave us both a chance to breathe before making a decision about our marriage. It got to the point where I stopped believing that he would leave me. He was often tormented by nightmares. I would hear him screaming in the middle of the night and find him huddled in the corner of the bedroom, covered in sweat. I would cool him down with wet towels and hold him until he came to. Finally, he slowly told me what the nightmares were about and some of the things that had happened in the camps: torture, death, and starvation. It was more than any human being could bear. I was the only one he ever told, and I was sure I had heard only a fraction of his personal horror story. I felt sad again that I couldn't give him the perfect reunion and peace he so deserved. I resumed my efforts to care for him, despite what had happened to us. His personality and character gradually returned. He still had periods of moodiness and would withdraw into himself from time to time. I would give him a few hours, and then I would usually find him in the upper fields or by the river. I didn't want to leave him for long because the darkness inside him only grew stronger. 6 months later, I nervously asked him, "Let's start over, okay? Forget about the woman who made the biggest mistake of her life and believe in the new woman you met after the war. Before you, she had been with 3 men, but she only truly loved one. A wonderful man whom she lost. She is a good farmer and a caring woman, and she will be completely devoted to you. Don't put yourself down, Sally. You really cared about me. I doubt I would have recovered without you. I can't thank you enough for that. It would have been easy for you to leave me." "You would have recovered without me. You are an amazingly strong person. I admire that you survived, let alone recovered. You know that your dream is still here, waiting for you. Me, the farm, the house, the future, everything. But for that to happen, it takes you and us together. That's my dream too, Robert." Robert smiled. "That's a passionate plea, Sally. I wasn't sure you still felt that way, especially when I was so broken." The road to recovery was long and difficult, but we became more than friends again. It was like a new courtship, both of us cautiously testing the waters, and I was desperate not to push Robert away. We got there in small steps. I was in a better position than many women in the village who celebrated Victory in Europe Day. 5 out of 12 were divorced, 3 were single, and 2 were widowed. Thelma Swice was the only one whose marriage remained intact, but only just. 5 years later, we both felt confident enough to start a family. Our 3 children adored their father, as did I. And then I noticed that look he gave our children again. Fortunately, I saw it more and more often in the way he looked at me. We lived a long and happy life together. For the first time in 5 years, I left a business exhibition a day early. I work for a telecommunications company, and every year we participate in 3 business exhibitions. The exhibitions are held in different cities across the country, and each exhibition lasts 5 days. We arrive and set up our booth on Sunday and Monday, and the exhibition begins on Tuesday morning and ends on Thursday at noon. For the past 5 years, I have worked at each of these exhibitions and always stayed until the last box was packed and loaded onto the truck on Thursday afternoon. That was the case until the last exhibition. The last exhibition I worked at was in May at the San Diego Convention Center. On Tuesday evening during the exhibition, I severely sprained my ankle and was unable to work at our booth the next day. On Wednesday, during lunch, my boss told me that there was no point in staying at the show if I couldn't work and advised me to find a flight home. I didn't need to be told twice. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, I was on a plane to St. Louis. Before boarding the plane in San Diego, I called home and left a message for Tammy, my wife of 9 years, saying I would be home by 8 o'clock that evening. Tammy was upset with me about something before I left, but she didn't want to discuss it at that moment. She said we would work things out when I got home. I was upset that I had sprained my ankle and that my boss had told me to leave before the conference was over. But I was glad I would be able to get home early and find out what was bothering my wife. When the taxi stopped in front of the house, I noticed a black Cadillac in our driveway. I didn't know anyone who drove a Cadillac, and I was a little concerned that someone was at Tammy's house when she knew I was coming home. I believed she would be happy to discuss any problem she thought we had. When I entered the house, I heard voices in the living room. I walked from the hallway into the kitchen, peeked into the living room, and got the shock of my life. Tammy was sitting on the couch with my best friend, Mike Williams. That in itself wasn't shocking. What shocked me was that Tammy's blouse was unbuttoned. Tammy and Mike hadn't noticed me yet, so I walked through the kitchen and stopped at the edge of the living room. "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted. Tammy turned around, looked at me, and covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God! George, what are you doing home?" she asked. There was something strange in her voice, and the fact that she wasn't trying to hide her unbuttoned blouse seemed very suspicious. It was as if she had expected this to happen. "What's going on here?" I asked. "It's not what you think, honey," Tammy said. She even smiled when she said it. I started to wonder if I was dreaming until I felt the pain in my ankle again and realized it wasn't a dream. In the short time I had been in the room, Mike hadn't moved a muscle. He just stared at me with a smirk on his face. I couldn't take it anymore. Mike was a big guy, but I didn't care how tall he was or how much my ankle hurt. I was going to throw that bastard out of my house. I took a step toward the couch and suddenly found myself in the arms of another man. I didn't hear him come up behind me. He grabbed my right arm, twisted it behind my back, and wrapped his left arm around my neck as if he was going to strangle me. I could breathe, but I knew he could cut off my air supply at any moment. "I think you understand the situation now, George," Tammy said. "We've been waiting for you to start our little party. Mike finally told me what you do at those business conventions. Did you really think I'd never find out about your girlfriends? Or did you just think I didn't care? Well, for your information, I do care. You hurt me, and now I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to play with Mike and Tyrone, and you're going to watch. How do you like that?" I tried to tell Tammy she was wrong, but before I could say a word, the guy holding me shut my mouth and nose with something. The smell of whatever he was pressing against my nose was suffocating me, and soon I felt myself losing consciousness. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I came to, I found myself tied to the bed in the guest bedroom. My injured ankle felt like it was pressed against red-hot iron, and my other ankle and wrists were starting to go numb. Looking around quickly, I saw that my wrists and ankles were tied to the bed with a speaker cord. Tammy must have taken the cord from my workshop. Whoever tied me up had pulled the cords so tight that they were cutting off my circulation. For a moment, I forgot what Tammy had said to me before I lost consciousness, but my memory returned when I heard voices coming from the TV at the end of the bed. I looked at the TV and saw Tammy sitting on our bed completely naked with Mike. He was naked too. "George, are you awake yet? I hope so, because I wanted to show you what I'm going to enjoy," Tammy said, looking straight into the camera. Tyrone must have been the guy who grabbed me from behind. "I hope you enjoy the show, George. I know I will. We're filming everything so you can watch it as much as you want." At that moment, I didn't care what Tammy was doing. Our marriage was ruined. The only thing I cared about at that moment was how to free myself from her grip. I was worried about the blood circulation in my arms and legs. I didn't know how long it would take Tammy and her friends to finish what they started, and I wasn't going to wait. I started pulling with all my strength with my left leg, but the pain forced me to stop. I waited 30 seconds and then pulled again. I repeated this several times and then finally pulled hard, and the wire broke. I looked at my left ankle and saw that it was bleeding, but the wounds didn't seem too serious. Then I tackled my right leg. This was much more difficult because my right ankle was dislocated. By the time I managed to bite through the wire on my right leg, I had torn a piece of skin off my ankle, and it was bleeding heavily. Once my legs were free, I was able to ease the tension on my arms, but I couldn't untie the knots in the wire because I only had my teeth. In the end, I had to try to tear the wire binding my wrists the same way I had torn the wire on my ankles. By the time I freed my right wrist, it was bleeding almost as badly as my right ankle. With both legs and my right arm free, I was able to tear through the last piece of wire binding me with relative ease. My left wrist had only minor cuts, but it was bleeding a little. Once free, I noticed that the wounds on my ankles and wrists were still bleeding. I looked around the room for anything I could use as a bandage, but found nothing. The sheet was covered in blood. I was surprised to see how much blood there was on the bed. I tried to stand up, but felt dizzy and had to sit back down. Now my head was throbbing, my face was burning, and I felt nauseous. I closed my eyes and tried to calm my stomach when I heard my name. For a moment, I thought Tammy had come into the room, but when I opened my eyes, I realized she was talking to me on the TV. "George, are you watching this?" When I looked at the TV, I saw Tammy having sex. For a moment, I wondered if Tammy believed that I enjoyed watching her being pleasured. If she knew how angry I was at that moment, she would probably run away from home. I got out of bed and swung my right arm toward the TV. The impact sent blood splattering across the screen. "Now that idiot is finished," I heard Tammy say. I turned away from the TV and saw myself in the mirror. I had a large bump on my forehead that was already starting to turn blue. Looking closer, I realized it wasn't just one bump, but 4 small ones. They were marks from fists hitting my head. I couldn't believe that my wife had arranged for me to be drugged, beaten up, and then tied to a bed so she could humiliate me by having sex with my former best friend and some black guy I'd never seen before. I wanted to grab the baseball bat and go after them, but I realized there was a big downside to that. At that moment, I didn't feel strong. I was still feeling a little dizzy from whatever they had slipped me, and if Mike and his friend overpowered me, there was no telling what they might do. On the other hand, if they couldn't overpower me, I might kill someone, and they weren't worth going to jail for. Looking around the mess in the room again, I came up with a plan. I smeared blood on the headboard and pillows. Then I drew 2 parallel lines of blood on the carpet, leading from the bed to the door. I crossed the hall to the guest bathroom and found gauze and bandages under the sink. Before leaving the bathroom, I carefully made sure that I hadn't left any blood in the sink, on the cabinet door, or on the floor. Fortunately, the master bedroom in our house was downstairs, so I wasn't afraid that Tammy or her lovers would hear me. I returned to the bedroom, where I used my extensive Navy SEAL skills to administer first aid to myself. I bandaged both ankles and my left wrist, leaving only the wounds on my right wrist exposed. Then I grabbed the cordless phone next to the bed, making sure it was covered in blood, and dialed 911. When the 911 operator answered, I said, "Please help me. I believe they are going to kill me. Oh, God," and then dropped the phone on the floor without hanging up. Grabbing gauze and bandages, I went down the back stairs to the garage and then out of the house. Passing by the car parked in the driveway, I smeared blood on the driver's door handle and left a bloody handprint on the trunk lid. After that, I went to a vacant lot across the street from the house, hid behind some bushes, and sat down to wait for the show to begin. While I waited, I bandaged my right wrist. I didn't have to wait long. 5 minutes later, the first police car pulled up. 2 police officers got out and approached the house, while the second car stopped behind them. 2 officers from the second car went around the back of the house, while 2 at the front door waited for them to take their places. One of the officers at the front door rang the bell. He waited about 30 seconds, rang again, and after another 30 seconds knocked on the door with his hand. The porch light came on and Tammy opened the door. I would have bet she was ready to wet her pants when she saw the police at the door. Unfortunately, I was too far away to see the look on her face. "We received a 911 call from this address a few minutes ago. Can you tell us what the call was about?" one of the officers asked Tammy. "I don't know anything about a 911 call," she replied. "Who else is in the house?" "No one." Now Tammy was in trouble. They would never believe that answer. "You say there's no one else in the house?" "Yes, I'm home alone. My husband is out of town on business," Tammy replied. At that moment, Tammy's world collapsed. The two police officers who had gone around the back of the house returned with Mike and Tyrone. "Look who we found trying to get out the back door," said the police officer, holding Mike. When she saw Mike and Tyrone, Tammy felt her legs give way, and she slid down the door frame until she was sitting on the floor. One of the police officers helped Tammy to her feet and led her back into the house. Then the other police officers brought Mike and Tyrone into the house. I was disappointed that I couldn't see what was happening inside the house. I tried to imagine the scene when the police opened the door to the guest bedroom and saw the mess. The look of shock on Tammy's face when she saw that I wasn't in the room would have been priceless. I looked at the car in the driveway and considered crossing the street and getting into the trunk, but I couldn't risk being seen. There was complete silence for 10 minutes, and then there was noise and commotion. 2 more police cars arrived with their sirens and lights flashing. Shortly after, Mike and Tyrone were led out of the house in handcuffs, both arguing with the police, claiming they hadn't done anything to the woman's husband. Both men were put in the back seats of different cars and driven away, while the police thoroughly searched the car parked in the driveway. Blood on the driver's door handle was spotted fairly quickly, and then found on the trunk lid. One of the police officers approached the car where Tyrone was sitting, took the keys, and opened the trunk. I really wanted to be in the trunk when he opened it, but as it turned out, it didn't matter. The cop who looked in the trunk called for another cop and then a third. "There's guns and drugs in here," he shouted to the plainclothes cop who had just arrived. 3 MAC-10s and about a kilo of what looks like cocaine. For the next 20 minutes, I watched as the police photographed the contents of Tyrone's trunk and then towed the car away. The 2 cars with Mike and Tyrone drove off, and a short time later, Tammy came out of the house in handcuffs, was put into a patrol car, and driven away. There were still police officers in the house, and I watched as they cordoned off the front door with tape marked "Crime Scene." I decided it was time to leave. I crossed the vacant lot to the street behind the house and then, keeping to the shadows, walked 10 blocks to a shopping center with a McDonald's. I realized I looked pretty terrible with bloody bandages on my wrists and ankles and a bruise on my forehead, but I needed to get off the street for a while, and I had enough change in my pocket to buy a large cup of coffee. When I walked into the restaurant, I expected everyone to stare at me, but it turned out that I blended in with the crowd of McDonald's patrons. There were about 15 homeless people eating hamburgers or drinking coffee. No one paid any attention to me, as I sat down in a corner and started drinking my coffee. When I thought about what I had done, I couldn't help but smile. Imagining Tammy, Mike, and Tyrone being questioned by the police, I almost laughed out loud. The police would ask them what they had done with my body, and of course they wouldn't be able to answer that question, and anything they said would be considered a lie. The only problem I had left was how to show up again and not be accused of deliberately misleading the police. By the time I finished my coffee, I had an idea that I believed would work. When I approached the counter with my empty cup to ask for a refill, the manager approached me and said he would refill my cup if I left the restaurant. I accepted his offer. With a cup of fresh coffee in my hand, I walked 20 blocks from the restaurant to a park I knew well. Since I hid behind trees and bushes whenever a car approached, and it was difficult to walk on my injured ankle, it took me almost an hour to reach the park. There, I found a picnic table in a dark corner of the park and sat there until 3 in the morning. At that time, I took off my bandages, threw them in the trash, and moved to the other end of the park, where I lay down on the grass next to the running track. Despite the pain in my wrists and ankles, especially my right ankle, I was able to fall asleep before dawn. I lay as still as I could, hoping I could fall back asleep while I waited for what I knew was coming. The park I was in was a popular spot for joggers and people walking their dogs in the morning. I knew I would be found soon. I was right, and half an hour later I was lying in an ambulance rushing to the hospital. I had left my wallet on the nightstand in the guest room at home, so when I was taken to the hospital I had no identification. For some reason, I couldn't speak coherently when the doctors in the emergency room tried to find out who I was and what had happened to me. I also had trouble staying awake. I didn't want my game to end too quickly. The police arrived around noon. I pretended to be asleep until 1 p.m., and then I was ready to talk. I rehearsed what I was going to say and how I would answer questions so that I wouldn't stray from the truth. "Mr. Grant? Are you Mr. George Grant?" asked the plainclothes police officer. "Yes, I'm George Grant." "Mr. Grant, I'm Detective Manson, and I'd like to ask you a few questions if you don't mind." "Okay, but I'm not sure I can help you. I don't remember much. I don't even know how I got here." "You were found in the park around 6 this morning by a man walking his dog. Why don't you tell me what you remember?" said Manson. "Last night I came home from a trip to San Diego. I arrived a day earlier than planned. When I entered the house, my wife was talking to my best friend, Mike Williams. When I asked her what was going on, a man grabbed me from behind and held me, and my wife started yelling at me about something. It was hard to breathe, so I couldn't focus on what Tammy was saying. I believe they drugged me because the next thing I remember is waking up in our guest bedroom, tied to the bed. I noticed that I was bleeding from where my wrists and ankles had been tied, and I was starting to lose feeling in my hands and feet. I managed to free myself, but I damaged my wrists and ankles even more. Then I noticed the TV. It was on, and the image was coming from the master bedroom. Tammy was having sex with Mike and another man, a big black guy I had never seen before. I thought I heard them discussing what they were going to do to me. It sounded like they were planning to kill me, but I wasn't sure, because my mind was still a little foggy. I believed they were raping Tammy and were going to kill us both, and then I managed to bite through the wire that was tying me to the bed. Then I called 911. "You didn't get through, Mr. Grant. Why did you hang up?" Manson asked. "I hung up when I realized Tammy was involved. I thought I heard her say something like, 'Go deal with that bastard.' So I decided the best thing to do was try to get out of the house. But after that, I don't remember anything. I obviously got out, but I don't know how." "Do you remember who hit you?" Manson asked. "No, I don't remember," I replied. "But a lot of what happened is still a blur. What does my wife say about what happened?" "She claims she found out about your affair while you were away on business and decided to teach you a lesson. She said she didn't want to hurt you and that they would let you go once they had dealt with you." "Did she say where she got the idea that I was cheating on her?" I asked. "She said Mr. Williams told her." "What a stupid bitch. The only proof of my infidelity is the word of one man, and she decided to sleep with him to get back at me," I said. I thought she was smarter than that. "So you're saying you never had an affair?" "Of course not," I replied. "I never cheated on my wife. She only had to ask. I could easily prove I didn't cheat on her. I'm starting to believe she just wanted to do it and used the alleged affair as an excuse." Detective Manson asked me a few questions to clarify some points, but didn't dispute anything I said. The next day, I was discharged from the hospital. When I got home, there was a message from Tammy on my answering machine. She begged me to come to the police station and explain that it was all a misunderstanding. She said she needed my help to get out on bail. I deleted the message and got a beer from the fridge. The phone rang again, and it was Susan Crawford, Tammy's best friend. Susan was divorced. Her husband had caught her with her lover and kicked her out of the house. I had never liked Susan and didn't like the way she influenced Tammy. For some reason, I knew she had something to do with Tammy's behavior. Susan said she needed to talk to me, that it was important. Being a curious person, I invited her over. Susan arrived an hour later. "I spoke with Tammy," Susan said. "She's at her parents' house. She told me that you were cheating on her while you were away on business." "You know that's nonsense. I never cheated on her. Did she tell you what she did?" "She just said there was some kind of misunderstanding, that you called the police and they arrested her," Susan replied. "I can't believe Tammy did something so terrible. Did you really call the police? Why?" For the next 20 minutes, I told Tammy the same thing I had told Detective Manson. After all, most of it was true. Susan pretended to be shocked, but she didn't turn against Tammy. "That's not like Tammy. I just can't believe she would do something so crazy unless she had a nervous breakdown," Susan said. "Maybe. Will you talk to her? Give her a chance to explain her side of the story?" Susan asked. "Maybe if I have to. But I have to ask her why she didn't show me the same understanding. If she believed I was doing something wrong, why didn't she discuss it with me before taking such drastic measures? Did she talk to you about it?" Number. "If she had, I would have advised her to talk to you," Susan replied. I didn't believe that for a minute. I was sure Susan didn't think much of me, so I didn't think she would object to Tammy's idea of revenge. "I really don't know what got into her, George. All I can say is that you shouldn't do anything until you know all the facts," Susan said. "Don't worry, I won't," I replied. Susan said, "Okay," kissed me on the lips, and asked if she could do anything for me. I had no doubt what she meant, but I pretended not to understand. "No, Susan. You've already helped me a lot. I just need to be alone." As soon as Susan left, I called my lawyer and made an appointment for that same day. At 2 o'clock, I was at the office of Brian L. Townsend III. I quickly told him what Tammy had done and that I wanted him to start divorce proceedings as soon as possible. I told him I wanted the papers served on her the next day. "Mr. Grant, are you sure you want to move so quickly? Before you know all the facts?" Mr. Townsend asked. "I'm 68 years old, and I've handled more divorce cases than you can imagine. Many of those marriages could have been saved if the spouses had taken a little more time to make sure that this was really what they wanted. Don't you think you should think about it a little before you act?" "Perhaps you're right. Maybe I should think about it some more," I said. All right. I'm glad you're willing to wait a little longer." "Yes, I'll wait a little longer," I said. "Instead of giving Tammy the divorce papers tomorrow as I planned, let's wait until the day after tomorrow?" Mr. Townsend looked a little puzzled. "The day after tomorrow? I thought you agreed to wait a little longer. Are you sure you want to move so quickly?" "Mr. Townsend, with all due respect, if you're not prepared to act on my behalf in this matter, there are several other attorneys in the phone book who will," I said. "All right, Mr. Grant, if that's what you want, I'll give the papers to your wife the day after tomorrow." I told Mr. Townsend III that Tammy was at her parents' house and gave him their address, as well as her work address. When I left his office, I felt stunned, except for my right ankle, which still hurt like hell. As soon as I left Mr. Townsend III's office, I went to the bank, closed all our joint accounts, and canceled our joint credit cards. Then I opened new accounts in my name only. I knew that eventually I would probably have to give her half the money, but I was going to make her work for it. Over the next few weeks, Tammy tried to call me at work and at home several times. I didn't answer any of her calls. Then my lawyer called and said that Tammy was going to contest the divorce unless I agreed to meet with her so she could tell me her side of the story. "I need time to think," I said. "Okay. Call me when you decide what you want to do," Mr. Townsend III said. I waited a little over a month before calling Mr. Townsend III back. "Does Tammy still want to meet with me before agreeing to the divorce?" I asked. "I was expecting your response much earlier," he replied. "I will contact her attorney and find out if she is still insisting on a meeting." Mr. Townsend III called me back later that day and said that Tammy did indeed still want to meet with me. "Here's what I want you to tell my wife," I said. Tell her that I won't sit down with her at the negotiating table, and if she wants to contest the divorce, I'm fine with that. We'll just put everything on hold until she's ready to agree to the divorce. In the meantime, we'll remain married, but I won't see her or talk to her. Is that clear? That's perfectly clear, Mr. Grant. I'll give her your message. The next day, I went to visit Mike's wife, Beverly. She invited me in and offered me a drink. We sat down on the couch next to each other, and she started apologizing for what Mike had done. But I stopped her. Beverly, you are no more to blame for what Mike did than I am for what Tammy did. They are responsible for their own actions. You're right, of course, but I still feel guilty about what happened to you. I came over today to see if you two wanted to comfort each other, I said. Come on, George, you're a little devil. You know, Beverly, I've always found you very attractive, and if I had met you when I was single, I probably would have asked you out. I just believe that now. Maybe. Before I could finish my sentence, Beverly leaned toward me and kissed me. I'd love to, she said. Beverly led me into the bedroom where I undressed her. We made love slowly and unhurriedly. The next week, I got a call from the district attorney's office. Mr. Grant, this is Andrew Hartley. I'm the assistant district attorney handling the case against your wife, Mike Williams, and Tyrone Mater. Your wife's attorney informed us that he believes you do not intend to press charges against your wife. Is that correct? No, that's not correct. I haven't spoken to anyone about this. I really don't know what to do. I know my wife was involved in what happened to me, but I don't know if she planned to drug me, beat me, and tie me up. I believed she did it, but I can't prove it. I also don't know who tied me to the bed so tightly that I couldn't feel my arms or legs. I'm not asking for the charges to be dropped. I'll leave it up to you to decide what to do with these people. In the end, everyone got what they deserved. Tyrone was convicted of assault and kidnapping, as well as drug possession, and another felony for a weapon found in the trunk of his car. Mike pleaded guilty to assault, and Tammy pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit unlawful imprisonment. I believed they had made it up just to get her. Mike got a year in minimum security prison, and Tyrone got maximum security. Tammy got off the easiest. She was given probation. Despite the lenient sentence, Tammy was still convicted of a serious crime. She no longer had a say in our divorce. I got rid of her, but I kept the house and all our savings. A month after our divorce, Susan came to me and asked to talk to Tammy. She said that Tammy just wanted to explain what she had done and apologize to me. I pretended I didn't want to see her, but I was actually a little curious to hear what Tammy had to say. I let Susan talk me into meeting Tammy at a cocktail bar about a mile from my house. Thanks for agreeing to meet, Tammy said, sitting down across from me. George, I'm so sorry I did that to you, she began. But you have to understand what I've been through. I just found out that you've been cheating on me every time you've been out of town. No, I didn't cheat on you. What? I said I didn't cheat on you. I didn't have any affairs. I never cheated on you, I said. Of course. I know that now, but I didn't know then, Tammy said. Mike told me you were cheating on me, and I believed him. He was your best friend, so I didn't believe he would lie to me. I was so hurt and angry that I must have lost my mind for a while. Let's get this straight. When I was getting ready for my last trip, you already believed that I was cheating on you every time I left? Yes. Then why didn't you tell me when I asked you what was bothering you before I left? I should have, but I needed more time to figure things out before I could talk to you about it. When I finally stopped laughing at her, I said, You only had Mike's word that I was cheating on you, but you weren't ready to ask me if it was true, even though you were ready to plan your revenge. And you didn't suspect for a second that Mike wanted to be part of your revenge. I'm sorry, I can't explain what came over me. Bullshit. Whose idea was it to get Tyrone involved? Mike suggested we needed someone who wouldn't let you hurt us or escape while we tied you to the bed. Tyrone was Mike's friend. Mike has good friends. I didn't know he hung out with drug dealers, I said. How could you let Mike talk you into letting Tyrone fuck you? Tammy blushed and turned away from me. I slept with Mike the night before you came back. I didn't know it at the time, but Mike had hidden a video camera and filmed everything. On Wednesday morning, he showed me the tape and said he would send a copy to my parents if I didn't let Tyrone sleep with me that night. Mike blackmailed you into letting his friend sleep with you? Damn. This story is getting more interesting. Can I ask what you expected when it was over? Did you think I would forgive you for what you did to me? Well, I thought that then we would be even and could move on with our lives, leaving all that behind. That made me laugh again. Let's assume for a minute that I really did cheat on you, okay? You didn't know about it, so you weren't hurt until Mike told you that I was cheating, I said. I understand how painful that was for you, but you still didn't catch me in the act. You never saw me talking to another woman, let alone having sex with her. Instead of talking to me and telling me you found out about my affair, you decided to get revenge. Your plan for revenge was to drug me, tie me to the bed, and make me watch you sleep with two guys, one of whom was my best friend. The whole scene was staged to humiliate me, and for some reason you decided that would make us even. Most women would just have an affair if they wanted revenge. What you did goes way beyond revenge. You went too far, and even if I had cheated on you, I couldn't forgive you for what you did to me. Tammy lowered her head and began to cry. Please give me another chance. I love you. I've always loved you. You're the only man I've ever loved. I didn't mean to hurt you. What I did with Mike and Tyrone was just sex. It had nothing to do with love. Please, isn't there anything I can do to make you love me again? I'll do anything you ask. Just give me another chance. Tammy looked at me with wide eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. I couldn't stand to watch her cry. Do you really mean that, Tammy? What do I mean? She asked. Are you really willing to do anything I ask? Tammy tried to wipe the tears from her face. Yes, I'm willing to do anything. I'll do anything you want. I slipped out of the stall and stood up. I put my hand on Tammy's shoulder, leaned in so my mouth was close to her ear, and said, Die. Tammy put her head down on the table and started crying. I could hear her crying as I walked out the door. 3 months later, Beverly and I got married.